In the small town of Riverton, the law was supposed to protect the innocent. But behind the badge, there were secrets so dark that even the people who trusted them most would soon learn the hard way. And it all started with Officer Samuel Hayes, a man who swore to serve and protect, but instead betrayed a family for the sake of greed. The Johnson family had always been known for their honesty and hard work. Tanya Johnson, a single mother of 3, had done everything right. She had raised her children in a safe, loving home, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Her eldest son, Jamal, had dreams of becoming a lawyer, hoping to break free from the cycle of poverty that had trapped so many in their community. But those dreams were shattered one fateful night. It all began when Jamal was falsely accused of a crime he didn't commit. Officer Hayes, part of the local police force, was the first to respond. His cold demeanor and quick accusations made it clear he had already made up his mind. The case seemed like an open and shut situation, but Tanya knew something wasn't right. As the investigation unfolded, Tanya started to piece together strange clues. Officer Hayes had shown an unusual interest in the family's property, specifically their small business that Tanya had worked so hard to build. Jamal's arrest wasn't just a mistake. It was a calculated move in a much larger game of greed and corruption. Tanya found herself up against a system she once trusted as the walls closed in around her family. The truth seemed impossible to uncover, but Tanya was determined. She didn't know who to trust anymore, but she knew one thing for sure: she would fight for Jamal, no matter the cost. Tanya's search for the truth led her down a dangerous path. She started gathering evidence, tracking Officer Hayes' movements, and asking questions in the tight-knit community. At first, people were hesitant to talk, scared of the repercussions, but Tanya's persistence began to pay off when an unexpected ally came forward. Detective Rachel Simmons, a former colleague of Hayes. Rachel had recently been demoted, and she was eager to redeem herself by exposing the corruption within the department. She confided in Tanya about the shady dealings Hayes had been involved in, how he had used his position to manipulate evidence and intimidate witnesses, all while secretly working with a criminal network to secure his own financial interests. It turned out that the case against Jamal wasn't just a setup. It was part of a much larger conspiracy to steal from the very people Hayes was supposed to protect. The deeper Tanya dug, the more dangerous things became. Threatening messages were left on her doorstep, and she found her car tampered with more than once. But she couldn't stop. Her family's future was on the line, and she knew she had to expose the truth, no matter the personal cost. One night, as Tanya prepared to meet with Rachel and deliver the evidence they'd collected, disaster struck. Officer Hayes, realizing the walls were closing in, made his move. He ambushed Tanya outside her house, ready to silence her once and for all. But Tanya wasn't alone. Jamal, who had been quietly fighting his own battle in prison, had made a shocking move of his own. With the help of a trusted lawyer, Jamal had uncovered critical information that tied Hayes directly to the criminal activities. Just as Hayes was about to make his final move, Jamal's lawyer appeared with the damning evidence in hand, and it was too much for Hayes to cover up. The arrest was swift. Hayes was taken into custody, his entire network of corruption unraveling before his eyes. But the damage had been done. Tanya's family had been torn apart, their reputation destroyed, and Jamal had lost precious years of his life to a lie. However, the Johnson family refused to let that be their legacy. They fought back. Tanya, with the help of Rachel and the community, took legal action against the town and its corrupt officers. Jamal's charges were dropped, and he was reinstated in his college program. The Johnson family had taken down one of the most powerful figures in their town, and in doing so, they inspired others to stand up against injustice. As Tanya and her family began to rebuild their lives, they thought the nightmare was finally over. But they couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. The case against Officer Hayes had been big news, but what if there was more to the story? What if there were still people working behind the scenes, waiting for the right moment to strike? One evening, Tanya received a phone call that would change everything. It was Rachel, the detective who had helped them expose Hayes, but her voice sounded different, distraught. "Tanya, I think we missed something," Rachel said, her voice trembling. "There's someone else in play, someone higher up." Tanya's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Rachel hesitated, then dropped a bombshell. "It wasn't just Hayes. There's a whole network of corrupt officers, some even within the city council. Hayes was only the tip of the iceberg. The reason they went after Jamal, he wasn't just a pawn. He was a threat. He was getting too close to uncovering the whole operation." Tanya felt her world tilt. It wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. Rachel explained that she had uncovered an encrypted file on Hayes's old computer, one that contained detailed plans about illegal activities involving real estate scams, money laundering, and even connections to political figures who were using their influence to further their personal wealth. The files were encrypted with a password, but Rachel was determined to crack it. If they could access the file, it would expose the entire operation and take down a lot more people than just Officer Hayes. But as Rachel dug deeper, she realized something chilling. The files weren't just incriminating, they were a map that led to one of the most powerful, untouchable figures in Riverton, Mayor Greg Donovan. Donovan had been the one to cover up the crimes and had silently pushed Hayes to do the dirty work. The mayor was untouchable, protected by a web of lies, bribery, and the loyalty of those who owed him. Tanya's mind raced. She couldn't believe it. The one person who had appeared to be the champion of their town, the one who had spoken out about justice for all, was the very one orchestrating the corruption. And now he had his sights set on their family again. In a shocking twist, Tanya learned that the mayor had been following their every move. He had planted spies within their inner circle, and even Rachel had become a target. But Tanya wasn't about to back down. She had been through too much to stop now. This time, the fight wouldn't just be about saving Jamal. It would be about taking down the entire corrupt system, once and for all. Tanya called in the big guns, an old ally from her days as a community organizer, Marcus Westbrook, a former investigative journalist turned private investigator. Marcus was known for taking on impossible cases and winning. He had connections, resources, and an insatiable hunger for truth. Together, they formed an unlikely alliance, ready to take on the mayor and his network of corrupt officials. As they got closer to uncovering the mayor's secret dealings, Tanya was shocked to find out that Marcus had an even deeper connection to the case than she realized. He wasn't just helping them for the sake of justice. He had personal stakes in the game. Marcus's sister, Nina, had been killed in a hit-and-run years earlier, and the case had gone cold. What Tanya didn't know was that Nina had been investigating the mayor before her death. The hit-and-run wasn't an accident, it was murder. And Marcus had been silently plotting his revenge all along. As Marcus and Tanya dug deeper into the mayor's operation, they uncovered a series of off-the-record meetings and transactions that painted a terrifying picture of Riverton's power structure. The mayor's hands weren't just dirty, they were soaked in blood. But Marcus's personal connection to the case drove him to take bigger risks. Every new piece of evidence was another step closer to finding out who had truly orchestrated his sister's death. Marcus had been walking a fine line between justice and revenge, and now that line was beginning to blur. His single-minded focus on the mayor left Tanya uneasy. She could see it in his eyes. He wasn't just seeking justice for his sister anymore. He wanted to make the mayor pay in a way that only vengeance could satisfy. The tension between them was palpable, but Tanya couldn't afford to lose him. The walls were closing in. Not only was the mayor aware that they were closing in on him, but the corrupt officers that had worked for him had started to pick off those who knew too much. Rachel had gone missing, and now Tanya was terrified that Marcus would be next. The investigation had reached a boiling point when Marcus made a decision that shocked Tanya. He'd found the final piece of the puzzle, the mayor's hidden safe, containing the complete financial records of every illegal operation he'd run in Riverton over the last decade. But Marcus wasn't just planning to turn it over to the authorities. He had a more direct plan in mind. "Tonight we end this," Marcus said, his voice cold. "We take the evidence straight to the press. If the mayor wants to play dirty, we'll play dirtier." Tanya hesitated, knowing full well that this kind of move would make them the target of every corrupt official in Riverton. But Marcus had made up his mind. This is bigger than just the mayor, Tanya. He's been using this town as his personal playground for too long, and I won't stop until it's over. Just as Tanya was about to voice her concerns, a call came in. It was Rachel alive, but she wasn't calling from her phone. She was using a burner, and her voice was shaking. They know. I think they've been following you, Marcus, Rachel said, gasping for breath. I found something bigger than we ever realized. The mayor's involvement with a national syndicate, but they're on to me. You have to get out of here. Before Tanya could respond, Rachel's phone went silent. It wasn't a hang-up. It was a signal Rachel had been taken. In that moment, everything changed. Marcus's thirst for revenge had placed them all in grave danger, and now, the people who had been manipulating Riverton from the shadows were moving against them with a vengeance. Tanya knew they couldn't run anymore. She had a choice to make. Let Marcus exact his revenge and risk everything, or take the fight to the enemy, with Rachel's life hanging in the balance. With the mayor's plans unraveling and Marcus spiraling toward a dangerous vendetta, Tanya had to make an unexpected move. She knew the only way to take him down for good wasn't just through the press or the courts. It was through the one thing the mayor feared most: exposure. Tanya managed to track down the mayor's final secret, a hidden video recording of a secret meeting between him and the National Syndicate's leaders. This footage had the power to bring down not only the mayor, but the entire criminal network, and it was hidden in plain sight, locked away in a safe deposit box at the local bank. But here's where the twist came. The key to the deposit box was in the mayor's office, and Marcus had no idea it was right under his nose. Tanya, in a bold and unexpected move, decided to make her own stand. While Marcus was focused on the mayor's downfall, Tanya snuck into the mayor's office, retrieved the key, and made her way to the bank. As Tanya stood outside the bank, heart racing, the weight of what she was about to do hit her. She knew if she opened that safe deposit box, she would be stepping into the most dangerous game of her life. The mayor would stop at nothing to protect his secrets, and now Marcus, too, was a liability. With trembling hands, Tanya walked inside, pretending to be an ordinary customer. She made her way to the counter and presented her ID, calmly requesting access to the deposit box in question. The clerk looked at her suspiciously, but proceeded with the transaction. Tanya felt her pulse quicken with every passing second. She followed the clerk down to the vault, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the cold, sterile hallway. When they reached the row of safety deposit boxes, Tanya's nerves were at their peak. Her mind raced with thoughts of Marcus, Rachel, and the very real danger she was in. The clerk handed her the key, and with a quiet click, the box was unlocked. Tanya pulled out the contents. A single flash drive, its label simply marked Syndicate. Before she could breathe a sigh of relief, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. Tanya's heart skipped a beat. She turned just in time to see two security guards bursting into the vault. She had been set up. Somehow the mayor's men had tracked her every move. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a trap. Tanya grabbed the flash drive, shoving it into her pocket, and sprinted toward the exit, adrenaline surging through her veins. The guards were close behind, shouting at her to stop, but she couldn't. Not now. Not when everything depended on her getting this evidence to the press. With one final burst of speed, she darted out of the bank, slamming the door behind her. The air outside felt like freedom, but she knew it was short-lived. The mayor's men were everywhere, and they wouldn't stop until they had that drive in their hands. Tanya didn't go straight home. She couldn't risk it. Instead, she called Marcus and Rachel, hoping to make a plan. But there was no answer from either of them. Panic set in. She checked the flash drive one last time, praying the footage would be enough to expose everything. As she loaded it onto her laptop, her fingers froze. The files weren't what she expected. It wasn't just the mayor, it was a blueprint of corruption that reached beyond Riverton. The syndicate had ties to high-ranking officials across the country, including federal agents, corporate leaders, and even members of Congress. This was bigger than anyone had realized. Suddenly, Tanya felt a presence behind her. She turned to see none other than Mayor Greg Donovan himself, standing in the doorway. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with fury. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into, Tanya," he said, stepping into the room, his voice low and dangerous. Tanya stood tall, clutching the laptop to her chest. "I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm not going down without a fight." The mayor laughed, his expression cold. "You've made a grave mistake. You think you're the hero here, but you're just a pawn. You've already lost." Before Tanya could react, the door slammed shut, and two of the mayor's men stormed into the room, grabbing her arms. But just as they were about to restrain her, there was a loud crash from the window. In a blur, a figure shot through the opening, knocking the men to the ground with expert precision. It was Marcus. "Get the laptop." "Now," he shouted, pulling Tanya toward the door. Without missing a beat, he grabbed the flash drive from her, and they ran, dodging bullets as they made their way through the alley. Tanya's heart was racing. They were moments away from being caught, but Marcus had a plan. As they reached the car, Marcus drove with a single focus, getting the evidence to the press. But as they sped toward the news station, the unthinkable happened. The news station was already compromised. By the time they arrived, the building was surrounded by armed men. Marcus slammed the brakes, and they slid to a stop just outside the parking lot. "Where do we go now?" Tanya asked, panic creeping into her voice. Marcus looked grim. "We go to the one place we know will be safe, but we'll have to do it alone." As they made their way through the back streets of Riverton, Tanya realized that this fight wasn't just about the mayor anymore. It was about survival. They had no allies left, no backup. They were on their own in a game where the stakes were life and death. Will Tanya and Marcus make it out alive? Will they bring down the mayor and his syndicate before it's too late? Hit that subscribe button to stay with us as the fight for justice reaches its explosive climax. You won't want to miss what happens next.